Have you ever felt trapped in your own thoughts, caught in cycles of worry and self-doubt, wishing you could silence the inner critic that holds you back? You're not alone, and the good news is there's a powerful, proven method for taking back control of your mind. In today's story, inspired by the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism, you'll uncover the secrets to breaking free from negative thinking and reclaiming clarity, confidence, and purpose in your everyday life. Stay tuned until the very end, because we'll reveal practical, life-changing strategies you can implement immediately, strategies used by some of the most successful, balanced, and fulfilled people out there. If you're ready to experience less stress, more resilience, and a greater sense of inner peace, hit subscribe and join our growing community. Support the channel and never miss another inspiring story, because your next breakthrough could be just moments away. Negative thinking has a way of creeping into our daily lives, often so subtly that we might not realize how much of our mindset it occupies until it's already taken root. You might begin the day with a small worry. Perhaps you overslept by a few minutes, or you recalled an unresolved conflict from yesterday and suddenly find yourself mired in doubts that color your entire morning. This process, while common, can be incredibly draining, siphoning energy from more productive or uplifting pursuits. Whether you're fretting about the future, replaying conversations you wish had gone differently, or berating yourself for perceived failures, negative thinking functions much like a parasitic vine steadily wrapping itself around the branches of your mind. One of the most deceptive aspects of negative thinking is how it can masquerade as simple caution or realism. For example, if you've ever thought, "I need to prepare for the worst so I'm not disappointed," you might have initially believed this was a sign of being responsible. While planning and caution certainly have their place, there's a point where protective thinking morphs into unproductive negativity. This shift often goes unnoticed. Before long, the caution you deemed wise at first can become pervasive cynicism, overshadowing your ability to appreciate the present moment. What begins as a single strand of worry transforms into a web that entraps your sense of possibility. The real trouble starts when these thoughts reshape how you see yourself and your capabilities. Even fleeting negative assumptions like feeling inadequate after a failed project or social rejection can become truths you carry around. The mind tends to filter new experiences through these self-limiting beliefs, perpetuating cycles of doubt and fear. In this sense, negativity doesn't merely exist in your head. It shapes the entire lens through which you perceive the world. You might avoid taking on new challenges because you've convinced yourself you'll fail, or you may hesitate to form deeper connections because you anticipate rejection. Over time, these stories can feel so entrenched that escaping them appears impossible. However, the message woven throughout this expanded script is one of hope, grounded in the notion that you have more control over your inner dialogue than you might realize. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and philosopher, was famously quoted as saying, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This principle lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, suggesting that while event circumstances and societal pressures may be outside our control, our interpretation of them is very much within our reach. By examining the roots of negative thoughts and applying practical methods to transform them, we can break the cycle and reclaim our mental and emotional freedom. Throughout the coming sections, we'll explore not just the philosophical backdrop of this perspective, but also specific real-world tactics you can employ. We'll talk about how to recognize when negativity has taken hold, how to question these disempowering narratives, and how to build resilience. If you've ever felt stifled by your own mind, you'll find that what follows isn't about denying real struggles or forcing yourself into a perpetual state of cheerfulness. Instead, it's a balanced approach, one that allows you to acknowledge challenges while also empowering you to view them through a more constructive lens. Negative thinking for many people begins inconspicuously. Perhaps you receive an offhand remark from a co-worker about a minor mistake in a project, and you interpret it as a sweeping criticism of your abilities. Even if they only intended a small piece of feedback, your mind might catastrophize the situation, spinning a story about how you're perpetually incompetent or destined to fail. Initially, this might feel like a mere moment of frustration, but left unchecked, it grows roots and flowers into a belief system that silently dictates your thoughts and behaviors. Consider how over time these beliefs start to accumulate. It's not just about one piece of feedback at work anymore. It's the argument you had with a friend, the memory of that time you stumbled during a presentation, or the fear that your new idea will never live up to your own expectations. Each negative experience, particularly when viewed through a pessimistic lens, can magnify the next. Eventually, your mind becomes a sort of echo chamber, replaying these doubts until they feel like absolute certainties. Marcus Aurelius, among other Stoic philosophers, urged followers to differentiate between events and our interpretations of those events. The critical point he made was that external circumstances, be they criticisms, disappointments, or setbacks, are not inherently negative. Rather, the negativity arises from the stories we construct about them. A delayed train, for instance, is merely a late arrival. You can label it an absolute disaster, or you can see it as an inconvenience that might allow you to practice patience or catch up on reading. Both perspectives originate from the same event, but they lead to vastly different emotional outcomes. Modern psychology corroborates much of what the Stoics recognized thousands of years ago, that negativity can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you repeatedly believe that you'll fail, you become less inclined to exert the effort needed for success. This lack of effort then contributes to underperformance, which in turn convinces you the original negative assumption was correct. The cycle continues, entrenching deeper and deeper, until the thought of trying something new or pushing outside your comfort zone seems absurd. Essentially, a single seed of negativity can grow into a robust weed that chokes out more balanced, optimistic perspectives if given enough time and unguarded mental space. But there is an empowering flip side. Because these beliefs are learned, they can be unlearned or replaced. Rather than expecting ourselves never to think negatively, we can train to recognize, question, and recalibrate those thoughts. The process includes challenging our immediate judgments and seeking alternative explanations. For instance, rather than concluding I'm incompetent because I made a mistake, we can adopt the perspective. Mistakes are part of learning. This is a chance to refine my skills. Such a seemingly small shift in language carries profound implications for emotional well-being and resilience. It's also important to note that negative thinking doesn't solely affect internal states like mood or confidence. It ripples outward. When you're caught in a loop of negativity, your relationships often suffer because you may become more critical or withdrawn. Your professional life can be stunted as well due to reluctance to pursue opportunities or the constant simmering fear of failure. In other words, letting negativity fester impacts not just how you feel about yourself, but the quality of your life across multiple domains. The first significant step in dismantling negative thinking involves recognizing the distinction between reality and the narrative you attach to it. You may wake up one morning feeling uneasy, and you notice a string of gloomy thoughts such as, "I'm so behind on my goals," or nothing ever goes my way. Each of these thoughts may feel intimately real in the moment, yet they could be drastically skewed versions of the truth. Stoic philosophy underscores the importance of this distinction, reminding us that our power lies more in how we interpret events than in the events themselves. Marcus Aurelius famously stated, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." This statement urges you to pause whenever you feel the rising tide of negativity and ask, is the event itself truly catastrophic? Or am I labeling it in such a way that it becomes catastrophic? For instance, a friend's offhand remark might initially sting, but is it genuinely a reflection of your entire character, or simply a momentary piece of feedback based on a narrow slice of context? By exploring these questions, you begin to see how the initial impression you formed might not be as definitive as it seems. One practical approach to controlling perceptions is to cultivate awareness of the internal monologue. When a problem arises, ask yourself whether you're engaging in black and white thinking or catastrophizing. Black and white thinking often leads to statements like, "This always happens," or "I never do anything right," while catastrophizing is the habit of inflating a minor difficulty into a world-ending crisis. Both are classic cognitive distortions well documented in psychological literature, particularly in cognitive behavioral therapy. Recognizing these distortions is akin to removing a filter that has been tinting your entire experience. Once you catch a distortive thought, try reframing it. "I made a mistake at work and this could cost me. My job could be re-examined as I made a mistake at work, and while it's not ideal, I can fix this by learning from the error and being more careful next time." This doesn't absolve you of accountability, but it prevents you from spiraling into a mindset where every mistake feels fatal. Over time, repeated reframing can dismantle entrenched negativity. A further technique is finding silver linings or focusing on potential growth embedded in challenges. If a project fails, you might look into what you gained: better insight, new skills, or clarity about what direction not to pursue. Though this might sound like superficial optimism, it's actually about broadening your perspective to include the positives you typically overlook. This is precisely how controlling perceptions can bring newfound calm and hope, ensuring that even when circumstances aren't ideal, you maintain a sense of personal agency. Recognizing that you have the power to shift how you interpret life events is incredibly liberating. Rather than being at the mercy of external triggers like a harsh word, a missed opportunity, or unforeseen setbacks, you have an internal toolkit to manage your responses. The resulting sense of empowerment can significantly reduce stress, enhance relationships, and open avenues for personal growth. Moreover, the better you become at moderating your immediate interpretations, the less frequently you'll find yourself trapped in the self-defeating loops of negative thinking. To address negative thinking effectively, it's vital to understand its origins. Many of our recurring worries and self-defeating beliefs are not random. They often emerge from deeper experiences, childhood conditioning, past failures, cultural messages, or even survival instincts that have become outdated in modern contexts. For example, if someone was repeatedly criticized for not meeting high standards during formative years, they might internalize the notion that nothing they do is ever good enough. This belief can then rear its head whenever they attempt something new or face a challenge that requires confidence. Marcus Aurelius, along with other Stoics, recognized that these deep-seated patterns dye the soul with the color of their thoughts. Essentially, if your thoughts revolve around fear or failure, that's the lens through which you'll see the world. A single piece of criticism from a boss might confirm long-standing insecurities, or a minor argument with a loved one might trigger disproportionate anxieties about abandonment. The mind's capacity to connect present events to past emotional imprints is extraordinary and often contributes to negativity by reinforcing older narratives that might not be relevant anymore. Identifying the root of a negative thought could be as simple as pausing when anxiety strikes and tracing it backward. Suppose you're afraid to speak up in a meeting. Ask yourself, why are you recalling a specific time when you were chastised for voicing an opinion? Are you worried about looking foolish based on one past experience? Maybe you come from a family culture that discouraged challenging authority figures. By unearthing these links, you transform the unconscious impetus of your fear into something conscious and therefore more malleable. Once illuminated, these beliefs lose some of their power. Challenging the root often involves collecting evidence against it. If you persistently think I'll never do well in social situations, list moments when you successfully navigated conversations or made a new friend. This shifts focus from what you believe you cannot do to what you have already done, effectively rewriting the mental script. Over time, such reality checks weaken the grip of entrenched negative thoughts. While the original triggers, like a remembered embarrassment or repeated childhood admonitions, may remain part of your story, they don't have to dictate your future responses. An important part of uprooting these deeper beliefs is practicing compassion toward yourself. Often people become frustrated or self-critical about harboring negativity, adding yet another layer of negative self-judgment. Instead, it might help to view these beliefs as outdated survival mechanisms that once served a purpose. Maybe fear of failure encouraged you to work harder in a competitive environment, or doubt made you cautious in uncertain situations. Understanding that these mindsets had a protective role in your past can make it easier to release them, now recognizing they may no longer serve your well-being or goals. When you unravel and confront the roots of your negative thinking, you pave the way for genuine transformation. It's a painstaking process, requiring honest self-reflection and persistence. But the outcome, a more peaceful, confident mindset, is well worth it. Rather than reacting on autopilot when negativity surfaces, you'll be able to pause, dissect its origin, and respond in a manner aligned with who you are, now not who you were, in some past situation. This empowers you to move forward unburdened by old maladaptive stories about yourself, making space for new possibilities and ways of engaging with the world. Building upon the awareness of your perceptions and the roots of negativity, the next step involves actively renewing your mind. This doesn't mean forcibly plastering on a smile whenever you feel down or pretending that challenges don't exist. Rather, it revolves around acknowledging your current mindset while gradually steering it in a direction that serves your well-being and goals. In essence, renewing your mind is the daily practice of questioning your thoughts, refining your internal narrative, and allowing new, more constructive beliefs to take root. One foundational technique for renewing your mind is the practice of mindfulness. By paying close attention to your thoughts without instantly judging them, you create a space where you can observe negativity as it arises. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough to lead this project," you can pause and label that as a thought rather than an absolute truth. This act of mental labeling short-circuits the automatic emotional reaction that often accompanies negative self-talk. You're then in a position to investigate the thought more critically. Is it true I'm not good enough, or am I experiencing fear based on a previous failure or someone else's expectations? In addition to mindfulness, reframing remains a powerful method to shift harmful narratives into more supportive ones. Consider a scenario where you've had a minor disagreement with a close friend. A negative, unrenewed mind might jump to conclusions such as, "They hate me now. Our friendship is over." A reframed perspective might say, "We had a disagreement, but that's a normal part of any relationship. We can talk it through and likely come out stronger." This reframing doesn't ignore the conflict. It simply prevents it from becoming a trigger for catastrophic self-defeating beliefs. Repeated exposure to positive or constructive statements can also assist in renewing your mind. This can be done through affirmations, short, meaningful statements you read or speak daily. While some dismiss affirmations as shallow, there's evidence that regularly focusing on supportive self-talk can reshape your neural pathways, making it easier for your mind to default to balanced thinking under stress. For instance, telling yourself, "I'm a continuous learner and setbacks only guide me to become more capable," invites a growth mindset. Over time, this perspective can supplant rigid notions of being doomed to fail because of a few past mistakes. Another dimension to renewing your mind involves setting boundaries for what you allow into your mental space. The digital age bombards us with potentially negative inputs, endless news cycles, social media comparisons, or toxic comment sections. To preserve your mental gains, it helps to intentionally curate what you read, watch, and listen to. By choosing educational, uplifting, or thought-provoking content, you reinforce the internal progress you're making. Conversely, constantly exposing yourself to negativity can sabotage your efforts by keeping old habit loops alive. Ultimately, renewing your mind is about aligning your internal dialogue with your overarching goals and values. If you value personal growth, then each day becomes an opportunity to question thoughts that contradict that value. If you cherish kindness, you can apply self-compassion when you slip up. In this way, renewing your mind isn't a one-time transformation, but an ongoing maintenance plan for emotional and mental health. The more you practice, the more second nature it becomes, and you'll find that over time you respond to life's challenges with a balanced, proactive mindset, rather than collapsing into habitual patterns of negativity. A critical but often overlooked aspect of fighting negative thinking is examining the environment that surrounds you. We are, to a substantial degree, products of our environments. If you regularly interact with people who are cynical or overly critical, this energy can seep into your mindset, reinforcing your existing doubts and fears. Similarly, a disorganized or chaotic living or working space may constantly remind you of unfinished tasks or responsibilities, exacerbating feelings of overwhelm and negativity. Conversely, clean, organized spaces and supportive, encouraging relationships can be catalysts for mental clarity and optimism. Marcus Aurelius noted that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Yet he also implied the importance of guarding those thoughts from influences that could corrupt their purity, while you bear ultimate responsibility for your internal dialogue. External factors can facilitate or impede your efforts. Cultivating a positive environment begins by assessing your personal, professional, and even digital networks. Who do you spend the most time with, and how do their outlooks affect you? If you find yourself consistently exposed to negativity, consider setting boundaries or seeking out communities that uplift and challenge you in a constructive way. Physical environment also matters. A cluttered or messy workspace can mirror a cluttered mind. When surrounded by chaos, you may subconsciously absorb the impression that life is out of control, fueling stress and negative thought patterns. On the other hand, arranging your surroundings so they're visually calm can support a mindset of order and serenity. Even small tweaks like adding plants, maximizing natural light, or displaying items that inspire gratitude or creativity can make a noticeable difference. This extends to digital spaces as well, including social media feeds and the online content you choose to consume. One strategy is to routinely filter out accounts that spark envy, anger, or comparison, replacing them with those that motivate or educate. In essence, creating a nurturing environment is about cutting off some of the feedback loops that perpetuate negativity. If your circle of friends continually complains about life or belittles your ambitions, it becomes infinitely harder to hold on to a growth-oriented mindset. If your home or office fosters constant distraction or disarray, your mind can struggle to focus on positive possibilities. The goal is not to live in a bubble removed from reality, but rather to be deliberate about the conditions that either support or undermine your mental well-being. One practical starting point is to do a brief environmental audit. For example, you might create a list of the top influences on your mental state, from the people you interact with most frequently, to the podcasts you listen to the layout of your bedroom. For each factor, ask whether it contributes positively or negatively to your mindset. Where you identify negative influences, brainstorm changes. This might include scheduling less time with a perpetually critical acquaintance, tidying your desk at the end of each workday, or replacing a doom-scrolling habit with reading uplifting articles or engaging in creative hobbies. Over time, these changes collectively foster an atmosphere more conducive to constructive thinking. By acknowledging the power of environment, you do more than just address surface-level issues. You strengthen your chances of successfully implementing the mindset shifts discussed in earlier paragraphs. A supportive context serves as fertile ground for your new, healthier thought patterns to grow, while a toxic or chaotic environment can stunt or even reverse the progress you've made. Ultimately, your external world can become a reflection of the inner changes you strive for, acting as both a scaffold and a mirror for your developing resilience, clarity, and sense of purpose. Having laid out the foundational ideas behind recognizing, questioning, and restructuring your thought patterns, it's important to address a key principle: personal responsibility. Whether you're exploring how perceptions color your experiences, delving into the roots of your negativity, practicing mind renewal, or shaping your surroundings, you alone stand at the helm of these transformations. Stoic philosophy consistently emphasizes this point. While external events and social environments can influence your emotional states, the power to interpret and respond remains yours. This realization can feel both liberating and daunting, because with it comes a sense of accountability for your mental health and well-being. But taking responsibility need not feel like a burden. In fact, it can be incredibly energizing to realize that you are not helplessly adrift in a sea of circumstances. Instead, you have a rudder, the capacity to choose, and the consciousness to direct your mind toward constructive frames of thought. The practical implications of this are huge. For instance, if you find yourself complaining about a recurring problem, such as always feeling undervalued at work or misunderstood in personal relationships, this principle urges you to see what part of the puzzle you might solve. Perhaps you can improve your communication skills, seek a different job that appreciates your talents, or set firmer boundaries. The point is that your thoughts and subsequent actions can pave a fresh path forward instead of cycling in an unproductive loop of blame or resignation. As you prepare to move into the second part of this expanded script, you'll find more specific strategies that build on these foundational lessons. We'll delve into what it means to take stoic action, harness the power of language to shape reality, and strengthen emotional resilience by viewing challenges as opportunities. We'll also discuss the vital role of gratitude and the perspective-shifting idea of impermanence. Each concept ties back to the overarching theme that by consciously directing your thoughts and actions, you step into a place of genuine power over negativity. Remember, the journey described in these lessons is ongoing. Even if you understand each principle, you may find implementing them consistently to be challenging. Negative thinking thrives on repetition and habit, so it requires repeated and intentional effort to rewire those patterns. The beauty, however, is in the progress made. Every moment you catch yourself spiraling into negativity and choose a more reasoned, optimistic, or balanced viewpoint is a victory that strengthens your new way of thinking. In essence, let Part 1 stand as the framework for understanding why negative thinking arises and how it can be fundamentally questioned. In Part 2, we'll translate that understanding into more concrete steps, practical techniques that encourage you to step out of rumination and into purposeful, values-driven action. Through such actions, supported by clearer internal dialogue, you'll find negativity losing its grip. You'll also discover that you have the capacity not only to change your own outlook, but to inspire a healthier psychological environment for those around you. Building upon the groundwork from Part 1, we shift our focus to the concept of action, specifically as framed by Stoic principles. One of the most important realizations in Stoic philosophy is that while you can't always control external events, you can choose how you respond to them. This extends beyond mere thought. It also involves deliberate behavior. If negative thinking often escalates when you remain idle, allowing doubts and fears to loop endlessly, then purposeful action serves as a powerful antidote. By engaging actively in problem-solving, you channel mental energy away from rumination and toward constructive outcomes. Marcus Aurelius summarized this succinctly by advising people to waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. There's a directness in this statement that cuts through the inertia caused by overthinking. Instead of spending all your time contemplating what an ideal response or a perfect life path might look like, begin taking steps, no matter how small, to move in a direction aligned with your core values. If anxiety stems from a concern about career stagnation, for example, start by updating your resume, reaching out to a mentor, or applying for a new opportunity. In doing so, you replace passive worry with tangible progress, building a sense of competence and control along the way. What's notable is that Stoic action doesn't demand heroic feats or dramatic life changes all at once. Rather, it's about a consistent, disciplined application of focused effort towards what you can influence. Modern psychology calls this approach problem-focused coping. Instead of getting stuck in an endless mental replay of what went wrong, you identify actionable steps that bring you closer to your goal. This shift from passivity to initiative helps disrupt negative cycles because your attention is now directed toward solutions instead of fixating on problems. Adopting Stoic action also means recognizing the difference between productive and unproductive worry. Productive worry might lead you to prepare a backup plan, rehearse a speech, or consult experts. Unproductive worry, on the other hand, leaves you frozen, replaying potential failures without contributing any actionable insights. If you notice that your mind is locked in unproductive worry, consciously pivot toward an action, even a small one. By doing so, you gradually train your brain to respond to stressors with purposeful engagement rather than paralyzing dread. Moreover, action inherently involves risk. There's always the possibility that your chosen steps won't pan out as hoped. Yet Stoicism teaches that failure is not a sign of personal inadequacy, but a natural part of living a proactive life. You learn, adjust, and act again. In fact, the greatest failure, according to Stoic ideals, is never trying at all, because in inaction you forfeit the chance to shape your destiny. Taking steps toward your ambitions or solutions affirms your agency, which is precisely what negativity often tries to undermine. By embracing Stoic action in your daily routines, you create a buffer against the persistent chatter of self-doubt. When you see consistent progress, be it in the form of completed tasks, new connections, or simply self-improvement, that evidence stands as a counterweight to negativity. You realize that you're not trapped in the same cyclical patterns of fear or low self-esteem. Instead, each action you take becomes a statement of belief in your ability to influence your circumstances, reinforcing the mindset that you do indeed have power over your mind, and, by extension, your life's direction. The words you choose, both in the privacy of your thoughts and in exchanges with others, carry profound implications. Language isn't just a vehicle for expressing an emotion or observation. It actually reinforces, and in some cases, co-creates the emotional state from which it arises. A passing feeling of insecurity can metastasize into entrenched self-doubt when framed repeatedly in absolute language such as "I never succeed" or "I'm always messing up." These statements, though you might perceive them as harmless venting, accumulate psychological weight over time. Marcus Aurelius underscored this concept when he wrote about the importance of maintaining high-quality thoughts. Yet, in a modern context, we often extend this to the recognition that we should also maintain high-quality expressions, whether in our internal monologue or external dialogues. Words act like small mental cues that shape your future thought processes. For instance, if you habitually respond to errors with "I'm stupid" rather than "I made a mistake," you're defining your entire identity by one negative event, rather than situating the problem as a singular, fixable occurrence. Over time, these negative absolutes evolve into self-fulfilling prophecies. Altering the language you use involves both awareness and deliberate practice. In your inner dialogue, remain vigilant for all or nothing phrases like "always," "never completely," or "totally." These can be replaced with more nuanced language that acknowledges the spectrum of reality. "I often face challenges in this area" is different from "I fail every time." Though seemingly minor, this shift in diction can safeguard your self-esteem by preventing you from conflating individual shortcomings with a global assessment of your worth. Your language choices in interpersonal communication also matter. Complaining, gossiping, or dramatizing events can cultivate negativity, not only in yourself, but also in the people around you. If you often commiserate with colleagues about how everything is terrible at work, you may be unconsciously reinforcing a pessimistic group narrative that will boomerang back to you. Conversely, if you frame difficulties as challenges we can overcome with the right approach, you contribute to an environment where collective resilience is more likely to flourish. You'll likely notice that others respond differently to positive solution-oriented language, which can encourage you to continue this healthier style of expression. To operationalize a shift in language, consider implementing short affirmations or mantras. For instance, phrases like "I'm capable of growth," "Every challenge teaches me something valuable," or "I handle adversity with grace and determination," can serve as antidotes to negative self-talk. Repeating these statements when self-doubt emerges helps crowd out counterproductive inner scripts. Over time, these affirmations blend into your habitual thought patterns, making it easier to meet life's obstacles with equanimity. Furthermore, written reflection can boost your command over language. Keeping a journal where you note how you describe daily events is a valuable form of self-observation. Record episodes of negativity, identify the wording you used, and then practice rephrasing them from a more constructive standpoint. This process highlights patterns and shows how certain phrases might be fueling your anxiety or dejection. By consciously deciding on more balanced or empowering words, you teach your mind a new, more adaptive vocabulary. Altogether, harnessing the power of words is about consciously choosing language that fosters optimism, resilience, and truth. It's not about denying that problems or failures exist. It's about framing them in a way that doesn't undermine your self-belief or the potential to find a solution. As your language evolves, so too does your perception of your capabilities and the opportunities that lie ahead. In Stoic philosophy, resilience isn't perceived as a fixed trait bestowed upon a select few. Rather, it's seen as a skill you can cultivate through practice, reflection, and conscious discipline. Emotional resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from hardships, adapt to new or challenging circumstances, and most importantly, learn and grow from each setback. It stands in direct opposition to negative thinking because negativity often capitalizes on emotional vulnerability. When you're resilient, you can endure stress, disappointment, or failure without succumbing to the dark spiral of self-doubt or defeatist beliefs. Marcus Aurelius spoke to this concept when he wrote about the soul remaining unconquered despite external chaos. In contemporary psychological terms, resilience is frequently described as bouncing back after adversity. But the Stoic viewpoint takes it a step further. It's not only about returning to baseline, it's also about emerging from each test stronger or wiser. This shift in understanding reframes obstacles from being purely detrimental to being potential catalysts for self-improvement. For instance, if you fail at a business venture, emotional resilience might involve feeling the sting of disappointment, but still recognizing an opportunity to refine your business strategy, expand your network, or rethink your approach to risk. Becoming emotionally resilient starts with identifying and challenging the beliefs that render you fragile in the face of problems. Negative thoughts often escalate emotional distress, convincing you that every setback is a definitive statement on your worth or future prospects. A resilient mindset counters this by emphasizing the temporary nature of setbacks and your capacity to adapt. By consistently reminding yourself this too shall pass, or every misstep is a lesson, not an endpoint, you build a mental buffer against emotional extremes. Another critical element is self-care, a term that can sometimes be trivialized but is deeply relevant here. Self-care encompasses activities that fortify both your mind and body, including adequate rest, proper nutrition, regular exercise, and mindful relaxation techniques. When you treat your body with kindness and maintain a balanced lifestyle, you equip your brain to handle stress more effectively. This synergy between physical and mental well-being is well established. A stressed or fatigued body heightens your susceptibility to negative thoughts, while a body in good health can manage challenges with improved clarity and composure. Resilience also involves building a support system. While much of Stoic thought highlights individual responsibility for one's mindset, there is equally an acknowledgement that humans are social beings who benefit from constructive relationships. Confiding in trusted friends, mentors, or counselors during turbulent times can offer fresh perspectives and emotional backing. It's not a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a strategic choice to surround yourself with encouragement and objective feedback. Lastly, resilience grows when you regularly test your limits in manageable ways. Taking small risks, embracing new projects, or even engaging in physical challenges like learning a martial art or trying an endurance sport can toughen your mental resolve. Each accomplishment, no matter how modest, fuels confidence that you can take on bigger hurdles in the future. Even failures in these controlled challenges present valuable data for improving your coping mechanisms. Over time, you accumulate a track record of having navigated adversity, which forms the bedrock of a resilient self-image. Gratitude often appears deceptively simple, yet its ramifications for combating negativity are profound. At its core, gratitude directs attention to what is going right in your life as opposed to what is going wrong. This redirection might sound slight, but it effectively recalibrates your baseline mindset. Instead of fixating on deficiencies, regrets, or fears, gratitude reminds you of existing assets, learned lessons, and positive aspects of your current circumstances. Marcus Aurelius's writings frequently reference the blessings or gifts one receives in life, whether from nature, fortune, or other people. He encourages reflection on these gifts as a means to ground oneself in perspective. Modern research supports this ancient intuition, showing that regular gratitude practices like journaling or verbal acknowledgements can boost mood, strengthen relationships, and reduce stress. For instance, writing down 3 things you're thankful for at the end of each day not only fosters a more optimistic outlook, but also primes your brain to look for good elements during the day, thus forming a positive feedback loop. The real power of gratitude emerges during challenging times. When your mind is on autopilot, negativity tends to commandeer your attention, narrowing your focus to problems and obscuring potential solutions or silver linings. However, a systematic gratitude routine forces a switch in cognitive gears. Perhaps you lost a job opportunity, or you're dealing with a strained relationship. By prompting yourself to consider what you still have: a supportive family member, good health, a skill set you've honed over years, you weaken the narrative that everything is going wrong. Even though difficulties remain, they no longer monopolize your mental landscape. Moreover, gratitude can act as a protective buffer in relationships. If you consistently express thanks to the people around you, whether that's for their time, their advice, or simply their company, you create an environment less prone to petty disputes and more inclined toward mutual appreciation. This doesn't mean conflicts never arise, but it fosters a climate where disagreements are more likely to be resolved from a place of respect and understanding rather than animosity. Gratitude reinforces the social fabric that negativity often tears apart. For the practice of gratitude to be effective, sincerity is crucial. It's not about shallow platitudes or forced niceties. Real gratitude requires pausing to genuinely reflect on what holds value in your life. For this reason, journaling or meditation techniques can be especially beneficial. When you set aside time, be it 5 minutes or a half hour, you signal to your mind that gratitude is a priority. You might be surprised to find that once you start listing reasons to be thankful, you uncover more and more. This awareness can substantially shift your emotional baseline over time, offering a counterweight to any negativity that arises. In practical terms, if you're new to gratitude exercises, you might start by writing a short entry each evening. Focus on concrete details. A compliment someone gave you, the weather that allowed you to go for a refreshing walk, or the simple pleasure of a satisfying meal. By anchoring gratitude in tangible experiences, you give it a firmness that pure abstraction lacks. Should negativity creep in the next day when you're stuck in traffic or get negative feedback at work, you can draw upon the memory of those positive points. Gradually, the mind becomes as adept at spotting blessings as it once was at cataloging problems, shifting the balance of your inner dialogue to something more constructive and life-affirming. Impermanence is a cornerstone concept in many philosophical and spiritual traditions, and it holds particular relevance for breaking cycles of negative thinking. The essence of impermanence is that everything changes, pleasant experiences fade, but so do painful ones. Ironically, we often resist this reality, clinging to illusions of permanency that exacerbate fear and anxiety. Consider how sometimes we dread losing a cherished relationship, a job, or good health. This dread can become so consuming that we fail to appreciate what we currently have. From a Stoic perspective, acknowledging impermanence isn't about apathy or detachment from the joys of life. Rather, it's an invitation to embrace the present moment more fully. When you realize that circumstances, whether good or bad, are in constant flux, you're more likely to cherish the good times without taking them for granted, and to weather the bad times with the understanding they won't last forever. Marcus Aurelius wrote frequently about the natural order of things, observing how states of being come and go and urging acceptance as a pathway to peace. How does impermanence help combat negativity? Let's say you're in the midst of a challenging situation, a falling out with a friend, financial stress, or perhaps a health scare. Under a negative framework, you might convince yourself that this difficulty defines your entire life, or will endure indefinitely. This bleak projection only heightens despair. However, if you firmly internalize the notion that all conditions are transient, your mindset shifts. You see the present struggle as part of a larger, ever-evolving narrative rather than a permanent indictment of your life's trajectory. Embracing impermanence also reduces attachment to rigid outcomes, which is a frequent trigger for negative thinking. When you insist that a specific outcome must happen for you to be happy, such as landing a particular job or preserving a friendship in exactly its current form, you leave yourself vulnerable to disappointment. By recognizing that change is a fundamental aspect of existence, you can find ways to adapt, pivot, or grow no matter what external events unfold. The potential for negativity diminishes because you no longer pin your emotional state solely on factors outside your control. Another byproduct of accepting impermanence is the cultivation of gratitude in the present. If you know that nothing is guaranteed, you savor positive experiences rather than letting them slip by unappreciated. This approach complements the gratitude practices discussed earlier and enriches your emotional resilience. When adversity hits, the memory of how conditions have shifted before can offer solace and perspective, reminding you that this too will pass, much like previous hardships you've overcome. Of course, embracing impermanence doesn't mean being indifferent or lacking in commitment. You can still pursue goals, nurture relationships, and work to maintain the good in your life. The difference is that you do so with the awareness that change is inevitable. This awareness encourages flexibility and adaptability, traits that are particularly beneficial when negativity threatens to take hold. With impermanence in your mental toolkit, you approach each day as an opportunity to engage fully, without the paralyzing fear that arises from trying to cling to what must inevitably shift. Having explored how to counteract negative thinking through perceptual shifts, practical actions, and emotional fortification, we now arrive at what might be the most pivotal strategy: living with purpose. At the root of many negative thought patterns is a sense of aimlessness or disconnection. When you aren't clear on why you're doing what you're doing, challenges can feel arbitrary and failures can seem overwhelming. By contrast, when you have a well-defined sense of purpose, an overarching goal or set of values guiding your decisions, your daily actions gain meaning, and obstacles become stepping stones toward something greater. Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics often asked themselves what it meant to live in accordance with nature or virtue, pointing toward the idea of a purposeful existence. They believed that aligning one's life with larger principles such as wisdom, courage, justice, or self-mastery provides a stabilizing force against external chaos and personal adversity. In today's context, purpose can be just as expansive or as focused as you need it to be. It might be a professional calling, an aspiration to improve the lives of others, or a creative mission that brings fulfillment. The key is that it resonates with your core identity, offering a North Star you can rely on when negativity threatens to derail you. When purpose underpins your life, setbacks feel less like existential crises and more like navigational adjustments. Let's say your purpose is to bring more compassion into the world through volunteer work or a service-oriented business. If you encounter difficulties like a lack of funds, uncertainty about which charitable initiative to support, or personal conflict with a team member, those obstacles don't define you. Instead, they're problems to solve on your journey toward your overarching vision. This perspective shift keeps negativity at bay because your identity and sense of worth aren't dependent on every single success or failure. They rest in the broader motivation that propels you forward. Another advantage of a purpose-driven life is the resilience it fosters. Purpose acts as an emotional anchor. When challenges loom, reminding yourself of your deeper goals can reignite motivation and keep you focused. Without this anchor, you may be more prone to catastrophizing every bump in the road, seeing them as proof of an inherently flawed life path. With purpose, you can evaluate setbacks in context. Is this just a temporary issue, or does it indicate a deeper misalignment with my values? In either case, the clarity of purpose helps you respond strategically rather than reflexively. Finding your purpose often requires self-exploration. Reflect on moments when you felt most alive or satisfied. Were you teaching someone a new skill, bringing a creative vision to fruition, or simply offering emotional support to a loved one? Identifying these moments can give you clues about what resonates with you at a deeper level. Once you have a sense of direction, write it down or articulate it clearly to yourself. This clarifies the intangible and keeps it front of mind. Then begin setting actionable goals that align with that purpose. Over time, these goals evolve into habits, further reinforcing a life structure where negativity has less room to operate. In essence, a purpose-driven life harnesses every technique discussed so far: perceptual reframing, stoic action, gratitude, and resilience, and channels them toward a meaningful end. Even if you're still refining your sense of purpose or testing different avenues to discover it, the intention to live intentionally rather than arbitrarily can drastically shift how you perceive and respond to adversity. Negativity may still arise, but with a guiding purpose, it loses its power to consume you entirely. You're not just existing. You're moving towards something that matters, and that sense of meaning renders negativity far more manageable. As we close out Part 2, the core message is that negative thinking doesn't vanish simply because we understand it intellectually. It diminishes when we put that understanding into consistent action. The Stoic pillars of purposeful action, mindful language, emotional resilience, gratitude, and acceptance of impermanence all serve as tools in this endeavor. Each lesson addresses a specific dimension of the human experience, from how we speak to ourselves and others to how we confront change and define meaning in our lives. A recurring theme in Stoicism is practice, regular, often daily commitment to aligning one's thoughts and actions with reason and virtue. Modern psychological practices echo this sentiment. Whether you're journaling about gratitude catching and reframing distortive thoughts, or consciously stepping outside your comfort zone to build resilience, the emphasis is on doing, not just understanding. These repeated actions rewire neural pathways, making constructive thinking and behavior increasingly automatic over time. In Part 3, we will bring these threads together, exploring how to implement these lessons cohesively and address the inevitable obstacles that arise on this path. We'll also discuss how these principles resonate beyond individual well-being, influencing relationships, professional spaces, and broader social interactions. While negativity can certainly feel like a solitary burden, the ripple effect of overcoming it extends far beyond the self-potentially uplifting families, communities, and workplaces. Before moving forward, take a moment to reflect on which principles from Part 2 resonated with you the most. Perhaps you realize you've been using absolute language that saps your self-esteem, or you've been letting unproductive worry dominate your mental bandwidth instead of taking stoic action. Even the simplest awareness is a form of progress. By acknowledging where you stand, you prepare yourself to forge ahead more purposefully. When negativity next attempts to take hold, you'll have specific tactics at your disposal, action steps grounded in both ancient wisdom and modern insight. Now we turn to the final section. Part 3, to delve deeper into sustaining these habits, navigating practical challenges, and reflecting on the transformative journey. The objective is not only to manage negativity, but also to foster a mindset geared toward continuous growth, self-compassion, and meaningful contributions to the world around you. Having journeyed through the fundamentals of identifying and challenging negative thoughts, along with action-oriented strategies, we arrive at a crucial synthesis point. How do these pieces fit into a coherent lifestyle that gradually but reliably counters negativity? The Stoic approach is holistic, bridging insight and action in such a way that each practice reinforces the others. By now, you've encountered concepts like reframing gratitude, purpose, and resilience. Yet to truly harness their transformative potential, the aim is to integrate them into a cohesive mindset, one that influences every facet of your life. Personal relationships, professional ambitions, and even simple daily routines. A unifying concept in Stoicism is the ability to consistently observe and direct one's mental processes. This observing self, a term also used in mindfulness-based psychotherapy, represents the part of you capable of noticing thoughts and emotions as they arise, without becoming lost in them. In day-to-day life, this can manifest as a gentle internal voice asking, "Is this line of thinking helping or harming me right now? Or am I responding to this event based on reason and empathy? Or am I stuck in past fears?" By regularly employing such self-inquiry, you stay aligned with the overarching goal of interrupting negative cycles before they intensify. Furthermore, combining lessons like gratitude and impermanence can produce a unique synergy. For instance, being grateful for fleeting moments, a warm conversation, the beauty of a sunset, or the satisfaction of finishing a book reminds you that each positive experience is impermanent but valuable. This recognition cultivates both an appreciation for the present and a readiness to navigate future changes. In parallel, the act of taking stoic action, like stepping out of your comfort zone to address a lingering concern, prevents you from passively fearing inevitable change. Instead, you meet life's flux head-on with purposeful engagement. It's also vital to return periodically to the notion of environment. A supportive social circle can bolster your practice of Stoic principles, especially if you share your journey with friends or colleagues also interested in personal growth. Sharing insights or reminding each other of key Stoic tenets can transform abstract philosophy into lived experience. Conversely, if you find yourself surrounded by constant negativity, it may require setting boundaries or seeking new circles where mutual encouragement is the norm. There's nothing inherently selfish about prioritizing an environment that nurtures your mental health. Indeed, it enables you to contribute more effectively and compassionately to others once your own mindset is stable. In essence, the Stoic approach requires that you recognize your life as an interconnected system rather than a set of isolated concerns. Each dimension, thought environment, action emotional regulation, interlocks with the others, creating either a stable or chaotic framework. By mindfully calibrating these interconnected areas, you build resilience that naturally resists negativity. This doesn't mean you'll never have a bad day or experience frustration. Rather, when such moments arise, you'll have a structured approach anchored in philosophical wisdom and practical application to process and move through them with greater ease. No journey toward diminishing negative thinking is devoid of setbacks. It's important to acknowledge these common challenges openly, as doing so equips you to handle them with less self-criticism and more problem-solving finesse. One frequent obstacle is the relapse into old thought patterns, especially under stress. You might be doing well diligently practicing mindfulness and reframing until an unexpected event, like an argument with a loved one or a major deadline at work, sends you spiraling back into negativity. In these moments, the most crucial thing is to recognize that backsliding is a normal part of change, not an indication that your efforts were worthless. A helpful response is to view these relapses as diagnostic opportunities. Ask yourself what triggered the slip and consider whether certain coping skills or routines were neglected in the preceding days. Were you too busy to maintain your gratitude journal? Did you skip your regular physical exercise? Sometimes the missing puzzle piece is as simple as failing to get enough sleep, which drastically reduces emotional regulation capabilities. By pinpointing the root causes, you transform a setback into an instructive moment that helps refine your plan. Negativity feeds on shame and hopelessness, so by treating relapses with curiosity, rather than reproach, you keep your forward momentum. Another prevalent challenge is dealing with external criticism or hostility. Even if you're diligently applying Stoic techniques, other people's negative remarks or actions can spark self-doubt. This is where a strong sense of purpose and the concept of controlling your perceptions come into play. You can't always prevent others from being critical, but you can control how you interpret their words. Instead of letting a harsh comment define your worth, evaluate whether there is any constructive feedback within the comment, or if it's merely a reflection of the other person's stress or biases. A well-grounded understanding of your goals and values makes it easier to distinguish between useful criticism and noise. Time constraints present yet another hurdle. Modern life can be hectic with obligations that leave little room for self-reflection or deliberate practice. That's why integrating Stoic exercises into existing routines can be far more sustainable than adding entirely new tasks. For example, you might incorporate brief mental check-ins during your commute, or recite affirmations while doing household chores. Even small pockets of mindfulness, like taking 3 deep breaths before opening your inbox, can accumulate over time, reinforcing a baseline of calm and reducing susceptibility to negative spirals. Finally, a lack of visible progress can dampen motivation. It can be disheartening if you've been practicing these techniques, yet feel that your mindset remains predominantly negative. In such cases, it helps to look for subtle victories. Maybe you recovered faster from a conflict than usual, or found yourself reframing a negative thought earlier than you would have in the past. Recognizing these incremental improvements is essential as they form the building blocks of lasting change. Just as a tree grows slowly and imperceptibly each day, your internal transformation may be unfolding in small but meaningful increments, eventually producing significant emotional growth. Cultivating a more optimistic and balanced mindset is less about sporadic bursts of inspiration and more about a sustained commitment to daily habits. Good habits, once firmly established, operate somewhat automatically, diminishing the mental effort required to maintain them. Think of how brushing your teeth is second nature. The same can become true for mental hygiene. Regular gratitude exercises, mindful check-ins, and journaling can be as natural as any other routine, serving as preventive measures against negativity. A strategic approach to forming such habits is the practice of habit stacking, a term popularized in behavioral psychology. The idea is to link a new positive habit with an existing one. For example, if you already drink a cup of coffee every morning, you could use that moment as a cue to write down one thing you're grateful for, or to quickly reframe any negative thought that has popped up since you woke up. By pairing your new habit with an established ritual, you reduce the friction that often prevents people from adopting novel behaviors. Monitoring your progress can also supercharge habit formation. Keeping a simple checklist or using a tracking app can make intangible changes, like mood improvements, feel more concrete. Each time you complete a 5-minute mindfulness exercise or practice a reframing technique, you mark it down. Over days and weeks, you'll see patterns in your consistency, and you can adjust accordingly. This tangible record of your efforts is particularly helpful on days when negativity claims that you never do anything right, as the checklist or app can serve as objective evidence of your consistent work. Habits become sustainable when they're both manageable and meaningful. If you start with overly ambitious goals like meditating for an hour each day, journaling 5 pages nightly, and reading a philosophy text every morning, you risk burnout. Instead, focus on small, repeatable practices. 5 minutes of meditation and a short paragraph of journaling or one Stoic quote each morning can be enough to reinforce your mindset. The power lies in repetition rather than sheer volume. Over time, you may naturally expand these habits as they become more ingrained in your daily life. Additionally, consider how you might blend social accountability into your habit building. Sharing a specific goal with a friend, such as committing to a week of consistent journaling, can create a sense of mutual encouragement. You might check in with each other briefly to report progress, celebrate successes, or discuss obstacles. This approach not only boosts motivation, but also spreads positivity beyond the self. Encouraging a friend or colleague to adopt similar practices can foster an environment where collective growth feels normal and negativity finds less fertile ground. When habits are well chosen, consistently practiced, and realistically scaled, they transform from temporary interventions into enduring facets of your lifestyle. This shift is key for fending off negativity because it means your protective mechanisms are always engaged. You don't have to muster extraordinary willpower every time a negative thought arises. Your practiced routines intervene on your behalf. The result is a life less susceptible to pessimistic spirals, one where optimism and constructive thinking become the standard rather than the exception. While much of this expanded script emphasizes personal growth, It's equally important to recognize the ripple effects your mental transformations can have on your relationships and broader community. When you actively combat negative thinking, you're not just improving your own life, you're also altering the emotional tone of your interactions. You might notice that friends, family, and co-workers respond differently to you when you present a calmer, more solution-oriented presence. In some cases, this can break cycles of conflict or misunderstanding that might have persisted for years. For instance, people often mirror the emotional cues of those around them, a phenomenon known as emotional contagion. If you remain grounded during a stressful group situation, others may sense that stability and be less likely to escalate tensions. Your new habits, like reframing problems constructively or expressing genuine gratitude, can set a behavioral precedent subtly influencing others to adopt more positive communication styles. Over time, what began as an individual pursuit of mental clarity can evolve into a shared culture of support and optimism in your household or workplace. This broadening effect aligns neatly with Stoic ethics, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of individuals in society. The ancient Stoics viewed personal virtue and societal well-being as inextricably linked. In modern terms, your steps toward mitigating negativity contribute not only to your personal mental health, but also to the health of your immediate social network. If you lead a team at work, for example, demonstrating emotional resilience and respectful communication can foster a more collaborative and innovation-friendly environment. Likewise, in family settings, modeling gratitude and emotional regulation can help children or siblings learn these traits implicitly. At the same time, it's worth noting that positive change can sometimes provoke resistance from those accustomed to old dynamics. When you start setting boundaries or refuse to engage in habitual complaining or gossip, certain individuals may challenge you or interpret your behavior as aloof. This pushback is often a defense mechanism. People can feel threatened when they see someone close to them adopting new, healthier habits if they themselves are not ready to change. Navigating these tensions requires a blend of empathy and firmness. You can acknowledge their feelings without compromising the mental progress you're making. Over time, many initially resistant individuals adapt to your new equilibrium, or even become curious about how to adopt similar strategies. Ultimately, when you work to diminish negativity in your own mind, you're contributing to a cultural shift, however modest, in your environment. While it might feel like a solitary battle at times, recognizing the broader ripple effect can provide additional motivation. Every moment you refrain from lashing out in anger or giving in to despair, you're demonstrating an alternative way of being. Such examples can be particularly powerful for those close to you who witness firsthand the tangible benefits of a Stoic-influenced, purpose-driven lifestyle. The Stoic journey, much like any authentic path to personal growth, is ongoing. It doesn't culminate in a single epiphany after which you're immune to negativity. Instead, it unfolds through continuous learning, regular self-audits, and adaptation to new life chapters. For instance, the strategies that worked well for you when you were single might need to be recalibrated when you're in a committed relationship or when you become a parent. Similarly, professional transitions like moving from one company to another or switching careers altogether may introduce fresh triggers for stress and doubt, requiring updated coping mechanisms. What remains constant, however, is the underlying philosophy that you hold the power to reshape your responses to life's unpredictabilities. Even if you momentarily lose sight of these Stoic principles amidst hectic schedules or emotional upheavals, the foundation you've built allows for quicker reorientation. Moments of regression become shorter and less severe as your mental muscle memory improves. This in turn fosters greater self-trust, the confidence that given enough patience and practice, you can navigate whatever circumstances life throws your way. A valuable practice for ensuring continual refinement is periodic self-reflection. This could take the form of a monthly or quarterly review where you ask questions like, which aspects of my life are generating the most stress or negativity right now? And which Stoic tools have I been using effectively and which have I neglected? Such check-ins can reveal patterns. Perhaps you've slipped in your gratitude practice, or you've allowed certain toxic relationships to regain influence. By catching these shifts early, you prevent a more extensive backslide. Moreover, embracing a lifelong learning stance extends beyond just your internal processes. You might read new books on philosophy, psychology, or personal development, seeking updated perspectives that challenge and refine your approach. Engaging in workshops or discussion groups can also provide external inputs that invigorate your practice. Even revisiting classical Stoic texts can yield fresh insights as your life circumstances evolve. A passage from Marcus Aurelius that seemed abstract in your 20s might resonate deeply in your 40s, given new experiences and responsibilities. Finally, continuous adaptation means maintaining a compassionate attitude toward yourself. Growth is rarely linear. You might find yourself breezing through several months with minimal negativity, only to be caught off guard by a sudden crisis or emotional wound. Self-compassion helps you avoid compounding the setback with additional layers of self-blame. Instead, you acknowledge the setback, reaffirm your commitment to mindful living, and employ the strategies you've cultivated to regain equilibrium. By blending perseverance, flexible thinking, and self-kindness, you ensure that each chapter of your life becomes a richer exploration of Stoic principles in action rather than a potential pitfall for negativity. As we near the conclusion of this comprehensive exploration, it's helpful to revisit the essential message. Negative thinking is not a permanent state nor an unalterable destiny. Instead, it's a learned pattern that, like any habit, can be questioned, dismantled, and replaced. The Stoic framework, comprising core lessons about perception, environment, gratitude, impermanence, resilience, and purposeful action, offers a roadmap for that process. This path doesn't require perfection or rigid positivity. Rather, it invites you to meet life with realism tempered by hope, determination, and reason. Every lesson presented here points to the same truth: you hold greater sway over your mind than your mind holds over you once you become consciously aware of your thought processes. This notion resonates through centuries of wisdom traditions and is supported by contemporary cognitive and behavioral sciences. While circumstances, genetics, and personal history shape your initial inclinations, they do not finalize your outlook. You can cultivate a mental environment where negativity loses its grip, replaced by a healthier, more adaptive perspective that opens doors to new possibilities. It is fitting to acknowledge that the journey ahead will demand effort. Breaking free from negativity requires daily vigilance, reflection, and the courage to face vulnerabilities. At times, it may feel easier to revert to old habits or blame external factors. But the enduring reward for persisting in these practices is a mind less burdened by self-imposed limitations. You may find yourself taking calculated risks, more confidently relating to others with increased empathy, and savoring joyful moments without the shadow of impending doom. Over time, these individual changes coalesce into a richer, more meaningful life experience. Wherever you stand at this moment, whether you're just beginning to notice negative patterns or have already spent years grappling with them, the invitation remains the same. Implement the lessons, Gradually treat each failure as an opportunity to learn and celebrate each small success as evidence of your capacity to grow. If the principles in these pages resonate with you, consider sharing them. Not because you must evangelize Stoicism, but because many around you might also be searching for a pathway out of their internal struggles. By extending what you've learned, you reinforce your own practice, while potentially planting a seed of hope in someone else's life. In conclusion, remember that negativity thrives in the dark corners of unexamined thought. Shine the light of awareness, compassion, and purposeful action on those corners and watch them recede. As Marcus Aurelius observed, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. May that realization guide you beyond mere avoidance of negative thinking toward the boundless potential of a mind and life deliberately shaped by wisdom, gratitude, and unwavering resilience. Now that you've absorbed these lessons and strategies, the final step is to bring them into the fabric of your everyday life. Comment, reflect, and engage. These are not passive teachings, but dynamic tools that reshape how you perceive and respond to the world. Take a moment, if you can, to jot down the key insights that resonated most. Perhaps you are struck by the powerful effect of changing your language, or by the idea that gratitude can be deliberately cultivated to shift your emotional baseline. Making a concise list of such takeaways can serve as a living document you revisit whenever negativity threatens to close in. Consider where you'll begin. Will it be with a morning gratitude routine, an after-work journaling session, or a simple commitment to recognizing and replacing all or nothing thinking? Start small, stay consistent, and watch as incremental efforts build upon themselves. For those who thrive on sharing progress, you might let a trusted friend in on your plan, discussing your daily reflections or celebrating small wins. This transparency not only keeps you accountable, but also normalizes the pursuit of mental well-being in your social circle. As you advance, be prepared for moments of ambivalence or skepticism, particularly if you've spent years or decades under the impression that negative thoughts are just who you are. Identity can be a powerful force. Remind yourself that identity, like everything else, is subject to change. The deeper you go into these Stoic-inspired practices, the more your identity can transform into one of resourcefulness, resilience, and rational optimism. Finally, accept that your application of these principles will evolve as you do. You might discover new layers of nuance in Marcus Aurelius's words a year from now that don't stand out today. You may adapt the exercises to fit a changing schedule or an unexpected life event. Allow for that evolution, recognizing that growth is not a single destination, but a continuous unfolding. Thank you for journeying through this lengthy, in-depth exploration. In the end, these insights mean little if they remain abstract. It's the tangible application, taking stoic action, choosing thoughtful language, building emotional resilience, practicing gratitude, embracing impermanence, and discovering purpose that breathes life into these ideas. Each small shift you make paves the way for larger transformations, both in your personal sphere and in the communities you touch. Go forward with the assurance that while negativity can be persistent, it's far from invincible. Armed with knowledge, consistent effort, and a willingness to adapt, you stand poised to reclaim the agency over your thoughts, experiences, and ultimately the shape of your life's narrative. Reflecting on this journey, it's empowering to see how small intentional shifts can profoundly change the way we handle life's ups and downs. Adopting Stoic techniques like gratitude, resilience, and purpose-driven thinking has personally opened doors I never imagined possible, allowing me to live with greater freedom, clarity, and emotional strength. I truly believe anyone can experience these same transformative benefits, no matter their background or current struggles. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which insight resonated with you the most? Do you have personal strategies or experiences you'd like to share? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's spark a vibrant conversation and support each other on this journey. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more life-changing content designed to help you thrive in any situation. Thanks for being here, and remember, your mind is your greatest tool. Use it well